Alright, this one's going to be a 2-bit hooker. This is one of my very favorite flies, certainly one of my most popular commercial patterns. And the idea behind this fly is I wanted something that was a small mayfly silhouette that was very heavy and very slim. And honestly, it took way too long to come up with this simple idea, but here it is. The fly is based around 2 tungsten beads. And in the case of this size 14, I've got 2 3/32 inch copper colored tungsten beads. I'm going to tie a red 2-bit hooker, so I'm going to use the copper beads. The hook is a Tiemco 3769, which is a standard length nymph hook. It's not an extra long, so standard shank length, 2 extra heavy nymph hook. So the fly seems a bit stubby to start with, but you'll see when it's all finished that sort of contributes to its skinny profile. So I've put both those beads on in the conventional manner, small hole toward the hook eye, just one in front of the other. And I'm going to start with some 70 denier UTC thread. And again, I'm going to use red here. I tie this fly in red, brown, black, olive, light olive. Purple is a new one that's coming. So the colors are really just up to you. So I'm going to start that thread just behind that second bead and cord my thread up just a bit. And I'm going to wrap back to the bend, and that's where the thread will hang about even with the point on the barb there. For the tail, I'm going to use a Coq de Leon hen saddle feather. This is dyed tan, dyed ginger, I think is what they call it. And I'm going to take a little clump of these. You can see on this feather, this is a really good example of a feather. You can see this top edge here, how stark that edge is, how clean it is. That tells me that those fibers are webbed right up to the tips. They're going to be very durable, a little bit thicker. They're going to hold up well. So I'm going to take a clump of 8 or 10 of these. And I'm going to draw them out at a right angle to the stem so that their tips become even. I'll grab those fibers and just peel them off. I'll take that little bundle and I'm going to tie it in at the bend. These feathers have just a bit of a curve. Anytime I encounter fibers with a curve, I always want to try to tie them in curve up. So I'll tie those in right at the bend with just a turn of thread, just a single turn there is all I've used. And now for the ribbing and what will ultimately become the tying thread. I'm going to tie in some, this is Tiemco 16/0, but Viva 16/0 will work fine as well. And I've got it in a bobbin because it's going to become my tying thread. For the moment it's going to be my ribbing, but it's going to become my tying thread. So I'm going to take the end of that thread and lay it here across the intersection with the thread at the bend and catch it there and drag that tag end down just behind the beads. Then I can wrap forward over the thread as well as the butt ends of the tail right up to the back of the beads, and then I'll take my bobbin and just drape it over my vise back there out of the way. And I know you can't see that too well, but there you go. So now I'll trim these butt ends out and I'm going to build the abdomen of the fly. Now on a 14 you've got obviously a bit more thread work than you would on a 16 or an 18. But what I want to do is make sure I get a nice red colored, solid colored body with a bit of a taper to it. So I'm pulling fairly hard on the thread, and that's to keep everything stacked and neat and even. And I'm just starting to build the taper by working the thread back and forth. Once I'm happy with that taper, I'll come in with my whip finisher and whip finish that red thread just up here behind the beads and trim that out. So now I'm going to pick up my 16/0 thread off the back of my vise and I'm going to cord it up just a bit. Now, I'm not going to twist it up crazy, but I want to cord it up a bit so it doesn't spread out too much. I'm going to use this to make my rib. Just a bit more twist here. I'm just going to go 4 or 5 turns up forward over the body, and once I get there I can sort of make a couple turns to end the abdomen. So as I made those wraps, I try to keep them evenly spaced, and I try to end them at the high point of the abdomen, the thickest part of the front taper. Now the wing case on this is medium opal mirage tinsel. I'm going to take a piece of this, clip the end square, and my trick for tying this in is I'm going to stand this up on edge along the near side of the hook, and I'm going to let my thread roll it to the top and just catch it with a couple of turns. At that point I can then sort of tweak this in back and forth. You can see I can move that to square that up on the hook. Get it here where I can see it. I want it to lay flat down the back of the fly. Once I'm there, I can anchor it down with a couple more turns, and you can see that, put this up for you, this has got a curve as it came off the spool. Anything that's got a curve I always tie in curve down. That way it will curve back out of my way and not be in the way while I'm trying to tie the rest of the fly. So now the thorax is mahogany superfine dubbing. And I'm going to take a little pinch of this and I'm going to put it on the thread as thinly and tightly as I can. I'm going to use this to fill the gaps between the beads, and I'm going to use it as a base for the leg, so I want it to be dubbed down tightly. And that's why I use the superfine here, is it's very easily controlled. So I'm going to begin to wrap this dubbing back here behind this bead right up to the base of the wing case, and I want to build a ball back here that's just about the size of the bead. Once I get there, I'm going to cross the thread on top in between the two beads, and I'll use this remaining dubbing to fill the void between those front two beads. And I can have just a tiny bit more right there. I just want to fill that neck, there we go, neck up between those two beads so that there's no movement. You can see the dubbing crosses across the top. So now we're going to do the legs. I'm going to use that same hen feather. I'm going to take a clump that's probably 20 fibers. And I'll square the tips up on the whole bundle. This is probably a few more than 20. I'm going to square the tips up on this bunch. Peel them off the stem. And what you're looking at here is the inside of the feather. What I'm going to do is divide this clump in half. I'm not cutting anything, I'm just using my scissor blades to divide it. And I'm going to take this clump and I sort of peel that separation point down in my finger so I can hold them that way. I'm going to set it on either side of the hook, and I want the tips to come back somewhere between the point of the hook and the point on the barb, so somewhere right in this area. That's the length that I'm shooting for. So I'll lay them in place along the sides of the hook and pinch them down in my material hand. You can sort of see how those fold or tend to over the hook. I'm going to take a loose turn all the way around and then start to tighten it toward me. I can sort of push those legs with my thread tension to get everything adjusted. I'll separate those butt ends. Now with the butt ends, can't quite see this, I can sort of tweak these butt ends to position the legs to shorten or lengthen them. about like so. So we've got 2 even sets of legs on both sides, on each side. So now I'm going to come in and trim these butt ends out. I'm going to use my fine tip scissors here and get in as close as I can. Then I'll take just a couple turns, and you can see how that dubbing underneath those thread wraps is sort of hard and rigid, so I can make those wraps without it sinking down into that. If you use soft dubbing there, your legs will stick out a lot more. So now I'm going to grab my flash and I'm going to pull it over the top, and I want to make sure that it's centered. So I'll square it up and I'll catch it with a couple of turns. So it's right square over the top of the thorax. And you can sort of tweak that back and forth as needed to get it positioned. And then I'll take the tag end here and I'll pull it back and catch it with a few more turns there. Just a more secure method of anchoring that flash so it won't come out. And I'll come in with my whip finisher. Make a nice clean neat thread head over that tie down and trim my thread out. And I'm going to lift the flash and just nick the corner of it and then tear it off. And that way I don't end up with a stub that sticks out across the top of that tie down. If I hold that just right, you can see how small that piece that's left is. So that's not going to stick up through my resin. I'm going to get everything positioned here. And now we're going to put our UV resin on here. And what I've been using is Solarez. This is the best stuff. This is the thick, hard formula. This is the best stuff that I found by a long shot. It dries very quickly, very hard, and with absolutely zero residue. So I'm going to take just a little gob of this. Got a bubble there. And I'm going to sweep the legs down. And using my short bodkin, I'm going to drop right on top of that wing case. And you can see I'll sort of bounce the needle all the way back to the base of the tail. And when I get there, I'll sweep forward again. Now I've picked up just a bit more than I need here, so I can adjust that. And in the meantime, I'm going to make sure I've got the wing case covered edge to edge, up onto the back of the front bead, and just sort of finish out my taper. And what I'm shooting for here is sort of a teardrop shape across the top of the fly. Once I'm happy with that shape, you can see what we've got there. I'll come in with my UV lamp and cook that for a few seconds. It's one of the really nice things about this Solarez is it doesn't take very long to cure. That is completely dry, no residue, nothing. Sort of reposition my legs, and that, I see that tiny little piece of fuzz sticking up there. See if I can get him with the camera. I don't know if we actually got him or not, but you see that little piece of dubbing right there? Just ignore that, that's not really there. That's our finished 2-bit hooker. Again, one of my favorite flies. Great dry dropper fly. I fish this fly, boy, every day during the summer, every day during every season for that matter. Particularly in size 14 with the 2 big beads. On a size 14, it's 2 3/32 beads. On a 16, it's 2 5/64. On an 18, it's 2 1/16 inch beads. So the bead size goes down per hook size, but the size 14 is the heaviest one of the bunch. Really a slender fly. There's not a lot of material sticking out from this fly to slow down its sink rate. So this fly is a little bomb. It goes straight down. It's very heavy and very slender, and the fish do love it. This is a fish catching fly. No two ways about it. Really fairly easy tie. Get you a couple packages of tungsten beads and a package of hooks. Remember, you're using 2 beads per hook, so you'll need more of those than you think. And twist them up for your box. I'm sure you're going to like it.